The Earth is almost 100 million miles away from the Sun. Pluto is 30 times that far, 3 billion miles away. To get to Pluto in our lifetimes means it has to go very fast.
To arrive at Pluto would take a while. Welcome to Beyond the Sun, and Harrison is here. Why are we talking about how far it is to Pluto?
Well, I thought it might be fun, since it's early in the year, to do a bit of a look ahead to things to watch in 2015 in space. And one of the big ones to watch is the arrival of a probe called New Horizons at Pluto. And it's going to get there. It's going to whiz past at 50,000 kilometers per hour. It's just a flyby.
Yep.
It's going to get there in July this summer, 2015.
When did it leave?
It launched in January 2006. So it's about an 8-year journey.
Well, that's not a lifetime like that clip just said.
No, but it's also actually coincidentally the fastest spacecraft ever launched on a direct trajectory away from Earth, though it did have a flyby of Jupiter as well to pick up even more speed en route to Pluto.
Okay, so all of that and then it'll just fly by? Why not get into an orbit and learn as much as we can?
It would be fantastic if a spacecraft could orbit Pluto, but the speed that that it requires New Horizons to get to Pluto, and then the small size, the small mass of Pluto, weak gravity, it just doesn't have the fuel that would be required for how much it would need to slow down when it gets to Pluto. We don't have the ability to launch something that would then be able to carry that much fuel with it for that long to slow down to enter Pluto's orbit.
Or would we have to send something that would just take like 25 years to get there?
Yeah, you could do something that would take much longer to get there, I suppose, but then you get into different technological problems of ensuring that something will last for that long. So it's just something that as technology gets better, that is the sort of thing that we'd be able to do. But at this point, a flyby is the best that we can do, though it's a remarkable one too. It's actually going to pass within about 10,000 kilometers of Pluto, so that's right there, and it's going to thread the needle between Pluto and the largest moon, Charon. So it's going to fly right between the two of them, and that's pretty good after traveling, 4.5–5 billion kilometers through the solar system over 8 years.
That's amazing, actually.
Quite remarkable, and it's going to get the best view of Pluto that anything ever has. There's never been a flyby of Pluto. It's sort of the only. It was once called a planet. It's not considered a planet anymore. Pluto's now considered a dwarf planet. But of all the things that were once considered planets, Pluto's the only one that's never had something go to it directly to do this sort of observation.
All right, and it'll be sending back information?
Oh yeah, it's got tons of cameras on it. It's going to take visual, color that we see. It's got infrared, near-infrared cameras. It's got a plasma detector. It's trying to collect dust samples. It's packed to the brim. The thing is about... picture a grand piano. It's got that sort of triangular shape to it, that sort of size. It's a nuclear-powered one. It's not solar-powered. Often you see probes with these big solar panels on it, but of course that far out, the sun is much too weak to provide any meaningful amount of power. It's running at something like 220 watts. Is how much power is coming off of this.
So sometime in July, we'll be doing this segment. We'll see photos.
We will see photos from Pluto, and we'll see some as it's getting closer and closer to it. It'll be taking photos as it gets closer and closer. But yep.
Meanwhile, we have another spacecraft, Dawn, which is arriving at, what is Ceres?
Ceres is the largest object. It's another dwarf planet, actually. It's a bit smaller than Pluto. It's about half the size of Pluto. But it's one that's in the main asteroid belt. It's between Mars and Jupiter. And Dawn is a spacecraft that launched back in September 2007, and it first went to a large asteroid called Vesta. It got there in July 2011, left Vesta in September 2012, and now it's going to be arriving at Ceres, by far the largest object in the main asteroid belt, and it'll be getting there in March this spring, early March.
Oh, so not too long from now?
Nope, not too, just a couple months from now.
Okay, what are we going to learn from both of these?
One of the interesting things with Ceres is that it is, in many ways, like a planet. In terms of what it's made of, its composition. It has a rocky core. There could be ice or frozen ice. Of course, ice is frozen.
Yeah, frozen water.
Yes, frozen water, that's right. It's possible that there is liquid water underneath the surface of this one as well. In the past, there's been plumes of water, or not water again, ice coming away from this thing. But it's hard to get a good look at it. The closest look we have is using Hubble, the best telescope we have. And you see that it's round, but you get this sort of fuzzy picture of the surface. With Dawn being there, taking those pictures close up, it's really going to reveal something. It's quite remarkable, actually. When Dawn was at Vesta, the best images we had of Vesta, again, were this sort of fuzzy, grainy things when it got there. Now you have this clear detail of small meteorite impacts, and it transforms something from being sort of distant, fuzzy image to something that we can actually understand and see how it works and
right.
what it's made of.
One of the things I know we'll be watching on this segment through 2015 will be the growth in private spaceflight.
Yeah, and that's something that has been growing for a number of years and will certainly continue into 2015 and the future beyond that. I think private spaceflight's getting more ambitious is something to watch for. In fact, just in about, I guess it's next week, January 6th, SpaceX on its next launch, its resupply mission up to the International Space Station, they're going to try to land the first stage of the rocket, the big, sort of the pencil part of it. They're going to try to land it on a barge in the ocean. After it deploys its cargo up to the International Space Station, the rocket, the first stage, is going to fly back down to Earth and try to land on something floating in the ocean about the size of a football field.
Well, we saw a test of that in an episode of Beyond the Sun not so long ago. We've recently seen some real disasters as well.
Certainly, it is
not
risky.
to the point of people dying. Oh, well, yes,
Virgin
actually, we did
Galactic
have that.
did
Yes,
have the
we
one.
did.
Yes. No, it is certainly something that's risky, and it's risky whether you're talking private spaceflight or public spaceflight. The risk is very much the same. But that's something that, to some extent, you have to accept when you're pushing boundaries to something new, that it is dangerous and it may not work every time. This one that SpaceX is going to attempt the landing on January 6th, Elon Musk, the founder of SpaceX, says that he thinks it's about 50-50 whether or not it'll work.
All right. Now, long-duration International Space Station stays, are they trying to constantly push the limits of how long you can stay in space?
Yeah, this is something that's it's a step in the long road towards sending people towards Mars or to asteroids or other sort of deep space destinations. And it's to understand better how people can handle being in space for an extended period of time. And so what's going to happen, they're going to launch in March. It's a Russian cosmonaut and an American astronaut, and they're going to launch up to the International Space Station. They're going to stay there for a year. The standard duration on the International Space Station is about 5 to 6 months.
That seems like a long time to float around in a tin can.
Well, it's a big tin can at least. The International Space Station internally is about the size of a jumbo jet, a 747, and of course its footprint is about the size of a football field. So it's sort of roomy as far as our tin cans go. But it's interesting that Russians in the past, when they had the Mir space station up flying in the 90s, 4 Russians have already done durations more than a year in space. The longest was 438 days back in 1994-95. And so the Russians have some experience with this. In fact, many of the people who hold the records for the longest duration space flights are Russians. And it's because they were doing it on Mir back in the 80s and 90s.
Well, we see visual there of people on exercise bicycles and such, keeping themselves in shape, fighting the anti-gravity thing, I guess. We only have a few moments, but what kind of shape were they in when they came back after that long?
Certainly rough shape. The big thing that you lose is muscle mass and the strength of your heart, and your bone density decreases because your body adapts to the environment that it finds itself in. And so if you're in an environment where there's very little gravity, your body doesn't have to work as hard to do ordinary things.
So like the rest of us, it doesn't.
And so, well,
if it doesn't have to work, it doesn't.
Exactly, and the same sort of thing. You know, if you do a lot of weightlifting, your body adapts by growing larger muscles. If you don't have to do weightlifting because you don't notice the weight, then your body adapts by having smaller muscles.
All right, appreciate it.
Thanks, Jerry.
Talk to you next week.